Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentor and yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, guys, I'm going to show you from inside of the cockpit how we deal with an approach to stall and recovery maneuver. I'm going to explain all the different indications and what they mean, and at the end, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the differences between the 737 next generation, the NG that I'm flying, and the 737 MAX and the now infamous MCAS system. So stay tuned.
Wind 31016, everyone right, right on.
Clear to land 31 right. Delta 260, introduce.
Right guys, this video is brought to you in cooperation with Skillshare. Now Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of high quality courses in pretty much any subject that you can imagine. The 501st of you who uses this link here below will get 2 months absolutely for free with their premium membership, so you can check out all of those courses for yourself. Enjoy.
Bust alert. Indicators.
Airspeed low. Airspeed low.
Disconnect.
Right, the first thing that we're going to start doing is talk a little bit about what stall is and why it is important for the pilots to be able to control an approaching stall condition. So there are thousands, well maybe not thousands, but there are several good videos out there on YouTube if you want to see exactly what a stall is. I'm not going to go into the basics of it, but what you need to understand is that an aircraft wing works when the air is flowing freely around it. All right, so the air flows under the wing and on top of the wing, and if the aircraft starts taking out a higher angle of attack, which means that it's increasing the angle towards the ongoing wind, well then it's going to be harder and harder for the air to stay following the overside of the wing. And at some point, which is called the critical angle of attack, the air will not be able to follow it anymore, and it's going to start letting loose here at the back of the wing and create a turbulence. Okay, when that happens, you will get buffeting, which is something I'll mention later on. But the important thing is that when that happens, the aircraft is not able to take out as much lift anymore, and it will lose roll authority, so they're able to turn like this. It will lose pitch authority as well, okay, and it will lose its ability to maintain the altitude, so unable to arrest descent rate. That's basically the definition of a stall for us. Of course, this is not something that a pilot ever wants to find himself in. Okay, a stall is something that we will train during our initial training. So when you start your PPL training or your CPL training, you will do stall, an approach to stall and recovery maneuvers. And then for each type that you fly, each aircraft type that you fly, you are still going to do it, because all the aircraft are slightly different. They might react to stall slightly differently depending on where the wings are or things like that. Okay, so when we practice an approach to stall maneuver, the first thing we do is we pattern the different indications. So that's what we are going to do now. Now I'm going to show you a video from inside of the cockpit when me and a friend of mine did this maneuver. I'm just going to show you a bit of it. If you want the full video, as in the full instructional video, including how we do approach to stall in turns and similar things, well then I highly recommend that you get the Mentour Aviation app. All right, it's completely free to download. You can take part in the fantastic forum that we've had. There's been a lot of discussion lately among the forum, depending on what happens outside in the aviation world. But get the app, and if you want these kind of videos, they are inside of the different collections that I've made with instructional material. So, when an aircraft starts losing its airspeed, it can be for many different reasons, but one reason, if you take as an example, let's say that the outer throttle has disengaged and the pilots haven't noticed it. Well, what's going to happen then is that as the speed starts decreasing, the aircraft, in order to maintain the altitude, is going to have to start pitching up. So the first indication that we might see is that the stabilizer trim is going to start moving backwards. Right? That's because the outer pallet is now maintaining the altitude. The pitch goes from maybe 3 degrees nose up that we would normally have to 4, 5, and it's just going to continue to pitch up because it needs more and more angle of attack as the airspeed decreases. Okay? So as the speed goes lower, the aircraft is going to start understanding that, we're getting a quite high angle of attack here, and it's going to start showing in the primary flight display the pitch limit indicators. That's the what we call the eyebrows. Those are amber and they look like eyebrows, hence the name. Those eyebrows are indicating the maximum angle of attack, or not angle of attack, the maximum pitch we can take out before we get stick shaker activation. So pitch limit indicator comes up, if the aircraft is trimming back, all of these are indications. The next thing that's going to happen is that we're going to starting to get closer and closer to the amber band. So this is a small amber indication that's on top of the barber's pole on our speed limit indicator. Sorry, on our speed indicator. So we're getting closer and closer to that. The next thing that we'll get is a message on our FMC CDU called buffet alert. Now this has nothing to do with food. It shows, the aircraft tells us that you might be coming into a speed area where you might be experiencing buffeting. All right, so buffet alert is on the CDU, and then when we touch the top of the amber band, indicates that we have a 1.3 G margin to our stall speed. Right, that's what the top of the amber band says. When that happens, the speed indicator, a little box that shows the airspeed on the primary flight display, is going to start blinking amber. Okay, once again, that's to catch the attention of the pilots. And together with that, we're going to get an oral warning from the cockpit that sounds like this.
Airspeed low, airspeed low.
Right, and if that didn't wake you up, nothing will, right? When a pilot hears that, there's definitely going to be action happening. But if it doesn't, if we continue to let the airspeed decrease, then the speed box is going to turn from blinking amber to solid amber, showing that you're still in a low speed condition. The speed will continue to decrease through the amber band, and at some point it's going to get close to the barber's poles. The barber's poles, they are black and red indicators that show an area of speed where you shouldn't be. Okay, so in this case, in the lower speed area, it shows you where you're stalling, and in the higher speed area, it shows where you're overspeeding. When we touch that, or just before, you might get either buffeting, which is that the aircraft feels like it's in turbulence and it's shaking. That's the air. Remember that I told you the air is now starting to kind of detach from the back of the wing and causing turbulence, and that's the buffeting. It might also be buffeting from the stabilizer. But either that, or as we touch the pitch limit indicator and the barber's poles, which will happen at the same time, we are going to get stick shaker, which is a little electric engine that shakes the sticks artificially. That is to really show, all right, now you're in a potential stall situation. Now the aircraft will stall slightly below the stick shaker onset. So the stick shaker will come before, because we never want to be in a fully blown stall. We want to make sure that the pilots do the escape maneuver before you get into the actual stall situation. Okay? Now, whoever sees that this is happening, so either the buffeting or the stall will call it out. The pilot flying will disconnect the autopilot and auto throttle, will pitch forward, and this is crucial. We have to get the nose down in order to decrease the angle of attack and get the wings flowing again, the wings working again. Okay? Now remember that I told you in the beginning that one of the definitions of stall is lack of pitch authority. So that might mean that you're sitting with a high pitch now, you're pitching forward, but the nose is not moving. Okay, this is where you might have to use stabilizer trim, and this is also where the MCAS comes in later on. So if you can't get the nose down, you might need to use the trim to trim it forward, because when we're using this, as you're pushing forward, you're just using the elevator on the back of the stabilizer. But as you're trimming, if you're putting the trim in, that's actually moving the entire stabilizer, and that's moving with the Jackscrew, which is a word you probably heard by now. So with the trim and the full forward pitch, the nose should start coming down. Okay? Now, when the nose is down, when you have it below the horizon, don't worry if altitude is decreasing. If you're at a high altitude, higher up in the cruise levels, it doesn't matter. Trade altitude for airspeed, because you have to get the speed back. You have to get that angle of attack down. And that goes down both with pitch and with an increase of airspeed. So keep it below the horizon, get the speed up, and then make sure that you have the speed brake retracted. Just verify that it's down. If it isn't down, of course, retract it. After that, start rolling wings level, if you aren't already. So pitch forward, that, roll wings level, and start adding thrust. Now you might ask, why didn't you just put the thrust on immediately? There's a very good reason for that, guys. Remember how the engines on the 737 are mounted under the wings, under the point of gravity? Well, that means that as the thrust is now coming on, these big engines which are mounted below the wings are now going to start pushing forward. And when they do so, they are going to give you an upwards movement of the nose. So if you are sitting with a high angle of attack, you're in a stall situation, the first thing you do would be to put thrust on. That might actually stop you, make it impossible to get the nose down because of the force of the engines. This is why you only start adding thrust once you have the pitch under control, and do it very slowly and carefully. If you lose pitch control, the aircraft might very quickly go into a secondary stall. Right? Not good. So add thrust nice and slowly, and once you have full thrust, you keep the nose. So you're going to need to trim forward more in order to maintain this. Once the speed is under control, so back into a normal area, maybe 220 knots or above on the 737, then you can think about maybe slowly start increasing the pitch in order to stop the descent rate or even start to regain. But do not stop the descent before you have the speed under control. This is really, really important, guys. Okay? Ready? Helt on?
Ready.
Cool. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to artificially turn off the auto throttle, and that's just to get the aircraft to start decelerating. Now we would never do that in normal life, but this is just to show you. So, auto throttle off. Thrust levels closed. Now the first thing that you will start to see is that the autopilot is now keeping the altitude of the aircraft. As the speed decreases, you'll see that the trim starts trimming back. That's because the aircraft needs to increase its nose attitude to maintain a higher and higher angle of attack to maintain the altitude. So speed is steadily decreasing. The pitch angle of the aircraft is coming up more and more. And when that pitch reaches the maximum angle of attack, that is when the aircraft is going to give us the stall warning. So we're coming close to the yellow band now. That will give you a 1.3 times the stall speed warning. And that's also when the pitch limit indicators, the little yellow eyebrows, appears. Now these eyebrows is indicating which pitch attitude we will actually get stick shaker at. Now we've got buffet alert from the CDU. And the next thing that should really wake us up is when the aircraft tells us that the speed is too low.
Airspeed low. Airspeed low.
Now that will definitely wake you up. That is also accompanied by the speed window starting to flash into amber, and it's going to turn solid amber, and it will keep like that until we're in a safe speed again. So as you can see now, the black and red Barber's poles is starting to come closer and closer. We're coming closer and closer to the pitch limit indicator, so now we're very close to approach to stall. Disconnecting auto throttle, making sure that the speed brake is down. Pitch forward, because we need to reduce the angle of attack. Now, trim.
Speed increasing, altitude decreasing.
Careful with pitches now, because as you can see, a secondary stall is really easy to get. So carefully increasing the thrusts, because as we do so, the underswung engines is going to start pitching the aircraft up, and we don't want that. So keep trimming. Full thrusts. Keep pitch under control. Changing altitude for speed. Now we're back onto a speed. Gently start pitching it up. Take the thrust back to normal thrust settings. Start regaining the altitude without losing any more airspeed. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to get the aircraft back under the protection of the automatic system. So Elton, if you could give me level change, please.
Level change.
Heading select.
Heading select.
As you can see now, the flight director is starting to show where exactly what pitch I need to keep in order to keep this speed and heading. Make sure that the aircraft is properly trimmed. Command A. Auto throttle. Always verify every mode selection that is made, including the autopilot and the auto throttle, that the FMA is indicating the mode that we want to have. Okay, it's very important to always verify not only that these lights comes on, but that the modes are actually engaged in the FMA. So how is this different between the 737NG and the MAX then? Well, the difference between the MAX and the NG, there are many differences in it, but one of the main differences are the new engines. The new engines are bigger, and because they're bigger, remember where I did a video about why the engines are flat on the NG, you can check that out. Because these are bigger, you know, they couldn't flatten the bottom of these, they're too big. So Boeing had to move the engines forward a little bit and up a little bit. Now when Boeing did that, it also meant that changed the stall characteristics of the aircraft. The 737 MAX and the NG are equally less indicative of getting stalled. All right, they're very good, very nicely flying aircraft. All right, but once they're in a stall, you know, as they're in a stall with a high thrust on, they have slightly different characteristics, and that is because of these bigger engines on the MAX. So, in order to get the MAX certified by the FAA, they had to create this MCAS system that I'm sure you heard about. The MCAS stands for Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. So the MCAS system is there in order to help the pilots in that very particular situation where you're sitting with a high angle of attack, a low speed with the flaps up and manual flight to get the nose down. Okay? Because of the engines being bigger, because of that giving a bigger kind of pitch up moment with high thrust, it needed to be there so that when the pilots try to get the nose forward, you know, to decrease the angle of attack, well then MCAS system would be there to pitch trim forward, all right, to move the stabilizer to a nose down position so that they can get out of the stall. Once they're out of the stall, you can trim it back again and get it under control. That was the idea with MCAS. And that's the difference between the NG and the MAX. Because the NG did not need this. The engines are differently situated. Okay? The MAX did need this under this particular circumstance. And when you're hearing people talking about the Jackscrew and MCAS and stuff, and it's very hard and confusing to understand what's being said in the press. The only thing you need to understand is that the Jackscrew is the mechanism that's needed to move the stabilizer, and this is what the MCAS system is using, and that's what we're using when we're trimming the aircraft. It's moving the stabilizer slightly up, slightly down, depending on what's needed to trim out the forces on the yoke. Okay, so they're not separate things. The fact that the Jackscrew has been found to be in pitch down means that the trim was in a nose forward position, and that's what the MCAS is designed to do. Right, guys, if you have more questions about this, if you want to discuss stall characteristics, things like this, well then go and join me now inside of the Mentour Aviation app. Okay, go to the chat, register yourself, get yourself a nickname. Remember to only use small characters, right? That's a feature of it, so make sure that we don't have duplicates of people in there. But join me, just tag @Mentour, and we can discuss, you know, the questions that you might have. Guys, I also want to take this opportunity to thank the sponsor of this episode, which makes these kind of episodes available to you. Today, that is Skillshare. And Skillshare is a fantastic online learning community. You have thousands of high quality courses and pretty much anything that you can even think about. And a course that I think that you guys might enjoy is a course where an actual flight instructor will teach you, using your home flight simulator, how to prepare for your PPL training. It's a really interesting course. He's highly qualified, and I think that you're going to enjoy it if you enjoy these kind of videos. The 501st of you guys who uses this link here below will get 2 months of Skillshare absolutely for free. So you can go in and you can check this course out, for example. Have an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.